Buen día. Llegó el último día, parece increíble, ¿no? Esta mañana me acordaba que hace un poco menos de un año estábamos buscando hoteles, presupuestos de catering para hacer el evento en forma presencial en la Universidad de Buenos Aires y ahora estamos terminando esta edición virtual. Para el que crea que virtual es más fácil, más barato y
If you
sencillo.
think that doing it in a virtual context is easier and cheaper, maybe it's not. It's a different technology. It's a different kind of experience. We need other resources, other suppliers, other equipment. This is a new experience for all of us. We are really happy about this experience. Now we can have some hybrid experiences. We can do it in a combination of virtual and face-to-face. So we are really happy about it. We have been moving from the technical point of view to the strategic issues. And today, the keynote speeches and the panels are going to be addressing ethics, AI, education, what the future holds, how to use technology to be part of the industry and to participate in everything that we need. We are going to start with the first panel with a lot of my friends and two people from where I am, Mendoza. Alejandro Prince, Mario Adaro, and Susana Vidal. Ana Laura, how are you? Good morning, everyone. It's a great honor to moderate this panel on ethics and AI. We have three excellent panelists, three speakers, and we're going to start with Mario Adaro. He's a Supreme Court Justice. Hold on, Anna, because I wanted to mention something about you. You are very young. You are from Mendoza, the same as myself. I was born in Mendoza. And Ana Laura is an engineer, and she's also doing a PhD on artificial intelligence. You are very young and you know a lot about the topic. And Ana Laura is going to be the moderator of this panel. Now I'm going to give you the floor. I'm sorry for the interruption and welcome all my friends here in the panel. Thank you. Welcome to the panel, and we are going to start with Mario Adaro, who is a Supreme Court Justice of Mendoza. Good morning. We are live, right? Yes. Good morning. I'm only going to have 5 minutes, so I want to mention some topics so that we can discuss and reflect on them. First, I want to thank Olga Cavalli, a great friend, a leader in internet governance in Latin America. And I want to thank the Argentine School of Internet Governance. I think that it's great to share this panel with Alejandro. I haven't met him. I have already met Susana. I think that it's great that in the technology agenda, we are starting to talk about ethics. I think it's important because this ethic dilemma that we are facing with the impact of new technology and artificial intelligence is going to be changing our society and human civilization as a whole. Now I'm going to mention the three specific points about ethics that I would like to address today and about AI. Many authors talk about ethics for design, by design, and in design. What is ethics for design? The machine's algorithm ethics. There we need to focus on the life cycle of the algorithm and AI. All the European Union papers mention this, and OECD papers as well, and Susana is going to talk about UNESCO. But the focus on ethics here has to do with the discussion that has to do with discrimination and biases. We need to understand that in the AI life cycle, the design is the mindset, the collection and construction of the data set, and later the model. What is the functionality of that model? And the second stage would be to validate. We always say that it's necessary to validate whenever we develop a system of AI, and later on to check the impact, to monitor it, and finally to have an accountability thing, because I think that is important, and the bias that we may have in data, in the algorithm, and in implementing the algorithm as well. A second point would be ethics by design, which is connected to the ethics codes. This is focused on engineers, companies, the industry as a whole, and developers. The idea of having an ethics code so that those in charge of developing algorithms understand the ethics principles. This was mentioned in the Barcelona Declaration and in the European Union Personal Data Declaration, as well as UNESCO. Susana is going to address that topic. And I want to mention a few tips for Argentinians to take into account. I'm also going to mention the Colombian ethics framework. The ethics code in Argentina is from 1984. I have been serving universities in Argentina, teaching IT or technology, and out of the 29 universities, only 6 include ethics within their curricula. Only 4 of them are religious institutions, so probably it has to do with that. There's one that is a public university and another one that addresses philosophy. So I think that by mentioning this, we have a problem as regards ethic principles. We need to train our human capital, our human resources in ethics. In 2018, many of Google developers were against the project of drones that Google had with the American government. We have seen it in Twitter and Instagram, the discussion on the developers regarding the ethics goal of companies. Now I'm going to address the last point, that is ethics in design. It has to do with the principles. Algorithm Watch is a German organization, a lab, that is following the different principles. Nowadays, there are around 173. There's been an evolution since 2015 as regards the ethic discussion. And there are many principles that arise from civil organizations, companies, and of course the public agenda of important agencies and the European Union, the UN. And I think the more discussed ethics framework is going to be the one in UNESCO. And the only one that we have today in South America is the one in Colombia. If we see all the ethic frameworks, there's no Latin American discussion in any country except in Colombia. I'm going to tell you that Most of these guidelines have to do with protecting human dignity and protecting human rights, protecting human personal data and governance, transparency as well, the black box and the white box. I would also add the green box, but there's discussion about it. And finally, human monitoring or supervision. I would add one more guideline that has to do with environmental law, that is the damage that society may arise to or the impacts that we may have in the environment. We are going to see different changes here. And I believe that in South America, we need some discussions on certain guidelines. I want to mention three. One is building citizenship, that citizens understand the impact of artificial intelligence. We need programs on AI and training programs on AI. Nowadays, we need to understand about it. And the second one is social cohesion. One thing is not to discriminate, and another thing is to have more inclusion. So we need social cohesion to be part of AI in Latin America. And finally, democratic values. We need to focus on these values, because maybe in Europe there are no discussions about democracy, but in South America, in Asia, Africa, we need to start discussing democratic values. And finally, let's talk about governance. I think that there are no governance models, but we need to discuss about them. I want to mention a couple of interesting things. One is the Budapest Pact for fighting cybercrime. We need international cooperation for that. And the second one is in ICANN, the multiple stakeholders model is great. It's for internet governance, and we can use it for data governance as well as AI governance. And the third model, which is the Center of Nuclear Energy in Europe, that was not only applied to nuclear energy, but also to everything else. Many of the internet communication protocols were taken from that model. So starting developing this governance model is paramount, and ethics is going to give us the different guidelines, but we need to see how we are going to address it. It is not very clear, and we don't know how to face, from the point of view of regulation, this political agenda. It's going to be regulated analogically without understanding all categories, or there's going to be an over-regulation, or there is no model at all. So I think that the most important thing has to do with human beings, self-regulation, such as we have in in America. There's a kind of idea of sandbox in which legislation is going to be a little more flexible, and we can have some trial and errors, although lawyers don't like it, but there is no other way. I still haven't found a model. We need to continue searching, and you can imagine whatever you want from the technological point of view, and you are going to achieve it. If you think about teletransportation nowadays, maybe in 50 years, it's going to be a reality. And that's the end of my speech.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the second speaker, that is Alejandro Prince, the Director of Press Consulting. Good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for discussing this issue. 10 years ago, I couldn't have imagined that I was going to be discussing this. However, over the last 2 or 3 years, we made significant progress getting towards this topic. So I'm a political science doctor, and I work for Texas Instruments for IT companies. And then I became involved in government, digital economy, where I teach in many universities. And since I'm on par with technological trends, I'm very interested in these limits principles. I like Maria's presentation. And later I'm going to ask for statistics, and I teach in the N5 universities. That is the National Technology University, where we have ethics as an elective. Yes, we do have artificial intelligence courses, but geared towards the development of applications with the ethics approach there. My approach is going to be different. I'm not going to be speaking of legal aspects with Mario or principles with Ana Laura. So I focus my presentation along these lines. As an advocate of robots, this is our new robots or slaves. They are thought to be our slaves. However, they made research, and rebel against. So the robots, they have less rights than the slaves themselves. If you go to the Roman Empire law, they had some rights, whether they killed somebody or whether they were working for somebody else, and they had a special right. Minors and women faced with these challenges like universal suffrage or sovereign power, we have many subjects or agents or subjects of law that, given the conditions of dementia, for example, they were acknowledged less freedom or less powers in the exercise of this law or right. So there's a struggle between bioconservationists like Eric Brosnan and some others. It would be reasonable beyond anybody's religion. I have the right not to be connected to any device, and we were discussing with the teleworking law, with the home office law. I'm not required to be working like I was working at the office given the pandemic, and I have the right not to be connected or not to be changed artificially. And then we have the obligation for all the organizations to self-identify or be self-labeled as robots. So the great discussion in Ian McEwan's Machine Like Me novel is a great book that I recommend. Machine is a spy. He has android robots. So he buys one. I'm not going to tell you the details of the novel, so I don't want to spoil that in the end. But there are many discussions held with the characters. None of the characters are experts in anything, but the discussions are very important. So one thing is the outlook, and second, the the topic are ethics, artificial intelligence, and morale. If we trace back to Socrates, we're still discussing the three topics. So these three words pose a great challenge. Mankind, with Prometheus stealing the fire to the goddess and Pandora's box and Elvis and the hope and the tree of the snake and Adam and Eve and the relationship with science, because this is the more clear symbol where man ceases to exist by themselves, transforming its habitat, and fire is clearly more than a metaphor. It has become a technology. Then they work on wicker work on ceramics, and then technology applied to water and animals and plants. So fire is the great element that has become a or that was a technology of its time. And we believe that humanity is in its millennial stages since 20 or from 2020 to 2040. We speak of Raymond Curry. We believe that technology is going to dominate biology, and man wants to become immortal. These entities shall not be focused on the typical android, but in many potentially dangerous robots with some logic, like in a black box, that we do not see. But we cannot declare the monkey that we have in the zoo of Buenos Aires as a human being to be the subject of human rights. I am working with Juan Corbalan, where we held many discussions. Having the rights of being a human being, a digital person, an electronic, a non-digital person, it would place artificial intelligence and the combination of all these agents self-managed by a computer, replicating our way of thinking, or self-programmed and program the rest of them when they don't do as they are told. So minors sometimes do not have the rights if they run into a car accident. Parents pay for those accidents. However, with artificial intelligence, in the chain of responsibility, we facilitate this and we are held accountable for this. The designer, the flagship of invention in a product that was typified to do a certain thing that is with a specific intelligence resolves very easily the problems like the Mayday movie or the plane crashes and the catastrophes. For example, Mario was telling us if we could have an agency that could understand this, given the governance that this person has separating components, person and the machines. For human beings and for the robot rights, we have a cycle where we have a gacha that was invented by a Guatemalan saying that I'm not a robot and I have to identify myself as a human being. But in the future, they will say, hi, I'm a robot, I'm Adam. As technologies evolved, some scientists are saying that there's a long way to go to have artificial intelligence or strong intelligence to reach a point with self-programming, making its own decisions, having raised awareness, identity, or to be formulated with our own criteria, being good or bad. That probably is not our morale, but it's going to be a principle, an artificial principle. We have other code of ethics apart from what we are discussing here, and if values change with time. For example, in the past, we honor corpses, and right now we have donated organs lately. For example, in the past, sharing organs was unheard of, and this was the largest transformation in humanity. As Sandra Sarsen, an Argentine sociologist, said, is that the danger is the speed or the rate at which this is happening. There comes a time where we cannot predict this, because this is a typical change in a critical phase. When AI has the power to decide and has this power, it could happen tomorrow, even though it may seem that it's a long way to go.
As we can see in dynamic system, maybe a factor, then another factor, then a huge explosion, and a lot of new species. The life in the sea, for example, and then another cataclysm or a cold or an ice age, and then extinction. So this is kind of what I am suggesting, to start thinking about offering this to robots, and that sometimes they may be legal agents. Thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you very much. And we will give the floor to our third speaker, that is Susana Vidal, responsible for the bioethics and the ethics initiative for science from UNESCO.
Tenés el micrófono apagado, Susana. Suele pasar.
Buenos días a todos y todas. Muchas gracias por esta invitación. Bueno, un saludo, por supuesto.
Good morning to all of you. My greetings to Olga Cavalli and Ana Laura and my colleagues that are here with me. I would like to give a presentation so you can follow me.
A ver, ¿me dice si está bien?
Can you see my presentation?
Sí, ahí estamos viendo el PowerPoint. Sí,
Ahí está en presentación completa, ¿sí? ¿Está bien?
perfecto, se ve.
Muy bien. Yo voy a tomarme estos minutos para presentarles lo que es
I'm going to take some time to present what this project is, what UNESCO is developing for in terms of ethics for artificial intelligence. Not only the regulatory framework or where we're working, but also, but since 2019, that UNESCO raise awareness on the implications for civilized change that are determining the impact of artificial intelligence over many dimensions. First and foremost, since the end of 2019 and throughout 2019, is to create public debate forum, trying to identify where the issues, the more relevant issues are, for research and application of these technologies, AI technologies, okay? Where we have identified the need to have training and information in the general public to be part or to take part in a democratic discussion. In the general conference, that is the core of the UNESCO, is the maximum authority, the top authority represented by all member states of this organization. We propose the first instrument at the worldwide level on ethics over AI that would be shaped as recommendation on ethics or AI ethics, presented by this organization with a sponsorship or with the support of the other organizations, few organizations. It's less binding than a convention, but is better or a better recommendation and declaration. Mario probably can illustrate this in terms of international right, but we're glad that it's just a recommendation. It's just to tell you what could be happening, but we want this process to be highly participatory for all the levels and with civil society structures, because the General Conference, together with the Secretary General, called for 24 experts to prepare the first draft that is going to end up with guidelines and eventual recommendations. The draft was prepared for April 2020, subject to public consultation. Later, I'm going to tell you what the original consultation was, ours. And first, we had an open consultation that was online. So if any legal person or organization, NGO, universities, the business world, the companies, if they wanted to ask questions on these recommendations, they could do so. And we did also an open consultation towards or inviting regions, like in Latin America. We held this August the 3rd, the 4th, and for the English speaking, the Caribbean was held during August 5th with a group of experts. Mario, as a matter of fact, came together with us. So by gathering all the proposals, all the recommendations of these guidelines, finally, in August, we started working with the committee and they published a new draft that is available in our website that I'm going to mention some highlights. The project will eventually be subject to the consideration of the state members. So if in the year 2021, we could approve it as a regulation at the global level. As Mario said, it would be the first regulatory framework approved by the states. This is a snapshot of the national and regional and interregional consultations. And as you can see, this was done or held August 3rd and 4th, and the 5th. You have also one for the Arab states, Asia Pacific, and others. The document is very self-explanatory, and the goal is to have a formulation of ethical values, principles, and recommendations on policies. And this is what I want to highlight. But to have, we wanted to have the applicability of concepts here. So we design and we made policies for research, design, development, deployment, and the use of AI so that systems would be at the service of humanity, of people, of societies, and the environment. The goal is very ambitious, as you can see. But in this second document, the number of values or principles that were a whole set right now were reduced to a few, to three or four. The main one is the respect and the protection and promotion of human dignity, human rights, and the fundamental freedoms. They have not included the robots, Alejandro, but we may think of them. The prosperity of the environment, the ecosystems, diversity and inclusion, and to live in harmony and at peace. I believe that this is interesting because it gives you a framework, an ethical framework, for this whole set of principles that are going to lie behind or underline the public policy designed by member states to regulate in their own countries the research, design, development, and use of AI. Given the time that I have, I cannot dwell in these details because this would demand analysis and explanation. However, it is important to the way we refer to the whole process that in a way summarizes these guidelines proposed by Mario for the need of having policy making or policy design. Also, we have this document in connection with policy action, where we assess ethics or the ethical impact, governance, and ethics in administration, data policies, development, international cooperation, environment, and ecosystems. I'm not going to 12, but every single area has several issues, broadly speaking, that will require some specific regulation. And to close my remarks, I would like to say that in order to open public debate, including dynamically all the stakeholders that are part of this new community that has been developed, that revolves around AI, because some of them, as Alejandro quite explained, in post-humanism, that they are satisfied with this sort of progress made, and some of them that are sad. But in Latin America, we know we need to have a space where we should not debate thinkers of other regions, but our own ideas, based on identifying the main ethical issues that revolve around Latin America that are not always related to artificial intelligence, but where we have life dependency for these people. This is the website that is called espacioUnesco.org. It's in English and Spanish. And you may visit, especially if you're working on along these lines. And probably you can Google Espacio UNESCO Artificial Intelligence, and you will find the Latin American Forum for discussing these issues. The challenges that we're faced with in Latin America are strictly related with inequalities, with poverty, and with the lack of access to basic utilities for many people in Latin America. The question is how AI will make a contribution to what the UN described as Sustainable Development Goals. We have the 17 SDGs that, in a way, should be in the prime objective of the agenda so nobody is left behind. I would like to conclude my remarks by way of a reflection that I'm concerned with because I've been teaching bioethics and science ethics. And for some time, Simone Bauman, the sociologist, brought to light some of the concepts proposed by Antonio Gramsci, that it was interregnum. Interregnum is a time where ethical principles that ruled at that time may not be applicable to new realities that require new principles and values. However, this set of values have not been thought. So it is important to discuss right now, since we are facing a pandemic, that some of the principles that we still have today that should be unavoidable, and all these new innovations that we have should never lose sight. The security system, peace, and freedom. Without any of these elements, we will not have life in this planet where we live in.
Muchas gracias, Susana. Una preguntita muy corta.
Thank you, Susana. Brief question. The documents that you mentioned, espacioUnesco.org, is a website, right? Yeah, we're trying to compile all these documents, all the documents that we just talked about. Both of the drafts are posted in that website.
Ana Laura, ¿me escuchás?
Ana Laura, can you hear me?
Sí, te escucho bien.
Bueno, yo antes de hacer unas preguntas de la audiencia, quiero decirle algo a todos
Before
los 500 becarios de toda América y
addressing the questions for the Q&A, I would like to say that it's Ana Laura's birthday, and I am bothering her with the moderation. Thank you very much. Virtual greetings to you.
Espero que no se te haya resultado medio raro, pero bueno, la vida es así, la verdad es que no sabía y te agradecemos muchísimo que estés aquí.
Thank you very much
Me quedé con una
that you're here with us today. And I have a reflection. Probably a principle could be the Budapest Convention that dates back to 2001, and right now it's been updated in 2020. I believe that we have a long way to go. It's very complex. I don't know what other words that come to my mind. This is super interesting because it has many axes and many pillars, and we've seen in Susana and Alejandro's presentations and the reflections made at Ana Laura. This implies technology, society, work, development, algorithm biases. What seems important is that there should be also a space for analysis. Mario said that there are not so many places where we can dwell in this detail. I'm going to ask some questions made by the audience. Eugenio Gonzalez says, good morning. I would like to know what is your opinion on how can you approach unbiased databases that at the same time is profitable for those database developers. Sometimes they do not reflect reality because there are always gender biases. I think they mean how to manage biases of algorithms and artificial intelligence without leading into troubles. And I would like to tell you that the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, 2 years ago launched Digital Cooperation Dialogue. And not so long ago, he launched the roadmap or the development roadmap for some of the issues where they include artificial intelligence, ethics, and the UN is having some working groups with experts to work along these lines. It is interesting because the UN has a very widespread membership of countries across the world. 60 have adhered to the Budapest Convention after 20 years. So we have to create spaces to reach consensus because technology evolves us, and Laura understands this full well because she's studying this in detail. So all your comments and your replies are more than welcome. Only we could discuss bias in general terms. They may think that the algorithm is unbiased and the way they manage data. Algorithms have a way of balancing things. We're talking about cross-functional studies, and most of the programs that we use that are developed in Silicon Valley between 20 and 45 years by white males. So here we have one culture. I don't know if you would like to add another comment. It seems to me that algorithms as a mirror analyze societies or measures indicators with computational work and with speed. They describe society. And it's not that they mirror or they reflect who we are, but it's the mirror of Snow White Witch, of what is going to be the future like. From that point of view, ethics is included in the agenda and is here to stay, but did not come early to debate religion or many of the digital transformations in humanity. But here, probably their ethics is here to stay to discuss this. It's not only data sets, but the whole cycle of life. To have cross-functional teams and interdisciplinary teams with the soft sciences, understanding law, ethics, sociologists, political science people, diversity, because a major concern are the possibility of having control, models like the FDA, if they have to approve an algorithm for its impact. But I believe the white paper at the UN is important because it speaks of low, medium, and high risk. Low risk should be self-regulated, high risk should be prohibited, and quite in the middle we have social impact. The other thing Susana said is understanding the cultural aspects of development, because in algorithms we have embedded the portability traps. Everything that is developed with an ethic concept in society probably is not having an impact in other societies. Like self-driven cars and the ethics principle in smart cars. everybody constructed a different ethic concept. So it's a bottom-up approach. And I said what we should do in terms of collaboration, but also bottom-up approach.
Dos comentarios, nada más. El primero me parece interesante decir,
First,
bueno, voy a salir en defensa de la
interestingly enough,
no es que llega tarde.
I would advocate ethics. It's not that it's coming too late, but it goes too slow. And this slowdown has to do
de la ética fue ya
with
revolucionario en términos de pasar de
the applicability of ethics revolutionized
y esa ética aplicada
the issue of apply ethics.
un poquito, pero me parece importante tener, requiere de esos dos
Let me delve into detail, but
la racionalidad teórica
have
reflexiva para pasar
theory,
a la práctica que precisa
reasonability, and practical reasonability that accounts for the interaction of many discussion topics. And this is the person that's not going to change, even though technology evolves fast. And if it changes, it's not going to become the ethics of apply ethics, whether it is good or bad. What seems to me is that we need to, we are not going to come up with special ethics framework for artificial intelligence different from the political ethical frameworks that we have conducted for democracy. So what we need to consider in terms of inequalities is that neither system nor one of artificial intelligence should represent the forms of domination of different sectors across the world over others, or countries or superpowers over others. This is not a form of domination that is gender based but colonial type domination. So they mentioned Cambridge Analytics, but they should be strictly linked to the notion of ethics because we cannot conceive ethics of for special use or for a special device. We should have or we should consider political ethics, conceiving the world for the future or the world that we should be living in with human beings and other forms of life subject to an environment that is not totally destroyed eventually. So this technology is part of some other technologies that are part of revolution for like biotechnology or synthetic biology that should be geared towards an ethical and political objective. And that objective cannot be reduced merely to a single thing. So let me conclude that the objective of profitability of companies that was mentioned here should be subject to the regulations made by the state, but not in line with the increase in domination. Susana advocated ethics, but I'm going to advocate data. Loose data and the categories that we have created is that it has a lot of subjectivity. So when we collect, process, and store data, our team is transferring with good or bad intention, but it's transferring some values. Like education, is we are conveying values when we teach. Civilization has done this in cultures, families, collectives, gypsies, Jewish, Afro-Americans, white people, descendants from Estonia, Romania. They do that with a way of working and with their own criteria. And this should be advocated because what's the risk of seeking AI that stops these biases? Biases are not that bad, but based on who operates or what operates with that bias. We should have ethics for AI, and that can neutralize or standardize the values for every single group, respecting the consensus reached at the international level that are not adhered by all countries, because some of the things are bad and some of them are good, as Susana well said. That is not harmful for human beings, gender-based policies, human rights, in line with the international conventions and organizations. However, there's a set of bias, and it is what provides flavor and values to human society. So it's not, we shouldn't have a filter AI ethics because it could be risky. It would be against ethics.
Muchas gracias, Alejandro. Ya tenemos que ir cerrando este panel.
Ana, bueno, ya le pasé a Ana todos los saludos de todos los...
Thank you very much.
Porque son distintas salas que están todas mezcladas acá en
Anna is not in the same Zoom room, but they all say hi, they all say happy birthday, they wish you the best. I like, Ale, what you said about filtering and pasteurization. I borrowed that concept from Luis. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anna. I know you're celebrating your birthday and you're still mother of the panel. I would like to thank Susana, Mario, Alejandro. I haven't seen you guys for a long time, but I see you in social media in the times of pandemia. Hope to see you in person soon. Greetings from Oscar and from Adrian. Greetings to all of you, and we will continue during today with YouTube in English and Spanish, and we will be in contact with you guys. And we will resume in a few minutes with another panel. We're going to have English and Spanish on the use of the Internet Governance Forum. 2 participants in Geneva, 1 in Kuwait, and 1 in Bolivia. See you in a few minutes.